US President Donald Trump has forced out Attorney General Jeff Sessions a day after the midterm election results came in. Trump has vowed to fight if the US House of Representatives' new Democratic majority initiates probes into his administration. Sessions, an early Trump supporter, had a fallout with the US president after he recused himself from an investigation into the Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential campaign. Sessions, in a letter, said that he was stepping down at Trump's request. The pink wave featured prominently in the U.S. midterm elections. Voters in Minnesota and Michigan elected the first two Muslim women to serve in the U.S. A former refugee who fled Somalia's civil war and a Detroit-born Palestinian American. Democrat Jared Polis became the first openly gay man to be elected governor of a U.S. state after winning the Colorado gubernatorial race. Polis, a former tech entrepreneur, previously served 5 terms as a representative from Colorado's 2nd District. He hugged his partner Marlon Rees and thanked him for his support, noting that Rees would be the first man in the history of Colorado. Polis and Rees are the parents of 2 children. Throughout his campaign, Polis promised to fund full-day kindergarten. Asian shares closed mixed in volatile trade after Democrats won control of the U.S. House of Representatives, boosting the party's ability to block President Donald Trump's political and economic agenda. Markets had already factored in the outcomes, but the prospect of political gridlock created some uncertainty for investors. Japan's Nikkei ended lower by 0.3% to 22,080 points, following swings in and out of the red, while South Korea's Kospi lost 0.5% to 2,078 after top U.S. diplomat Mike Pompeo's meeting with North Korea leader was reportedly postponed. Pakistani Christian woman Asia Bibi, whose acquittal in a blasphemy case sparked protests by Islamists, has been freed from a jail in Multan. Asia Bibi was taken to an undisclosed destination in a plane. Her destination was not clear. It's also unclear whether or not Asia Bibi had been flown out of Pakistan or not. Russia has said that it sees no prospects for an improvement in relations between Russia and the United States following the U.S. midterm elections. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also said that Russia would consider any new chemical weapons-related sanctions imposed by the U.S. to be illegal. The U.S. State Department has said that it would impose additional sanctions on Russia after Moscow failed to give reasonable assurances that it would not use chemical weapons after a nerve agent attack on a former Russian spy in the UK. 10,000 torches lit up the moat of the Tower of London to commemorate the centenary of the end of World War I. Inaugurated with the last post sounded from one of the towers, the display, entitled Beyond the Deepening Shadow, will run for 8 nights leading up to the Armistice Day on the 11th of this month. Every night, the tower moat will be gradually illuminated by individual torches lit by volunteers, many of whom have a family connection to the World War I. Now, during World War I, more than 1,600 city workers were sworn into service in the dry moat surrounding the tower before being deployed in Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that those who fought during World War I will be collectively honored at the Pantheon Monument in Paris. The French writer Maurice Genevoix, who was also known as the spokesperson of the soldiers, will also be interred at the same place. Genevoix, who was wounded in the First World War, wrote a series of books based on his war experience. More than 60 world leaders, including US President Donald Trump, are expected to attend the commemoration of the centenary of the Armistice in Paris on Sunday. After 100 years of the First World War, the doctors in France are trying to establish the identity of a French soldier. Laid out on a white sheet are the combatant's near-complete skeleton, many of the bones blackened, and his leather boots, the laces tied tight. What's missing is the soldier's identification tag. For months now, the forensic doctors Bruno Fremont has searched for clues to the identity of the soldier whose remains were found in March during resurfacing a road. He's all but lost hope. A DNA test is useless without a known relative to compare against. Russian servicemen dressed in historical uniforms marched through Moscow's Red Square to mark the 77th anniversary of the 1941 parade, when Soviet soldiers headed to the front lines of World War II. Alongside tanks and waving flags, the soldiers wearing 1940s uniform reenacted the historic parade. The event served to demonstrate the Russian army's resilience to German forces, as the troops that paraded past the Kremlin then headed directly to the front line, where many of them died in the Battle of Moscow events. Indonesia's National Transportation Safety Committee has said that an altitude sensor had been changed the day before the Lion Air plane crashed into the sea, killing 189 passengers on board. Experts say that the angle of the attack sensor is a crucial parameter that helps the aircraft's computers understand whether its nose is too high relative to the current of air, a phenomenon that can throw the plane into an aerodynamic stall and make it fall. The captain and first officer flying from Bali to Jakarta the night before the crash had indicators displaying differences in the angle of 20 degrees, but the flight landed safely despite having issues in the air. The body of a sixth victim has been found in the rubble of two dilapidated buildings that collapsed this week in the city of Marseille. Emergency services combing through the rubble have now found the bodies of 4 men and 2 women. Authorities had initially said that up to 8 people might have been buried in the debris. Rescue teams and their work had been complicated since the collapse had destabilized other nearby buildings in the street, which lies not far from the city's historic Old Port area. The centre-right European People's Party kicked off its annual Congress, a meeting at which it will elect its new leader. Alexander Stubb, who was Finland's Prime Minister and then Finance Minister before being ditched by his own party in 2016, is the only declared rival to the frontrunner, Germany's more conservative Manfred Weber. The winner will instantly become a favourite to replace Jean-Claude Juncker as President of the European Commission, the EU's most powerful job. Two women charged with murdering the estranged half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will begin their defense on January the 7th. Indonesian Siti Asia and Vietnamese Duan Huang face the death penalty on charges of murdering Kim Jong-nam by smearing his face with PX nerve agent at the Kuala Lumpur airport in February last year. They are both in their 20s and have pleaded not guilty, saying that they thought they were involved in a prank for a reality TV show. Two train lines were temporarily shut down at Barcelona's main station after a security scanner detected a possible explosive device inside a suitcase, but police later declared that there was no danger. Madrid's Atocha train station was also evacuated on police orders, but that incident turned out to be a false alarm. The two high-speed train lines at Barcelona Sants were later reopened. A nearly 3-kilometre-long train loaded with the iron ore was derailed in Australia while en route to a key shipping hub. The derailment came after the train ran away at high speed for nearly 100 kilometres when the driver left the cabin for an inspection. Nobody was injured in the incident, which took place 120 kilometres south of the world's largest iron ore loading terminal in northwestern Australia. Italy's coalition government has comfortably won a confidence vote in the upper house Senate on a contested security decree amidst growing tensions between the two ruling parties over a raft of issues. The bill, championed by Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini, who is head of the far-right League, tightens immigration regulations, limits the right to asylum, and also bolsters anti-terrorism and anti-mafia rules. The government won the vote easily by 163 to 59, with only five-star senators refusing to cast a ballot. The fifth World Internet Conference opened in the river town of Wuzhen in eastern China. The conference attracted about 1,500 guests from more than 70 countries and regions globally. In a congratulatory letter to the event, China's President Xi Jinping had expressed hope that participants can pool wisdom, accumulate consensus, and work for a sustainable digital world. In a meeting held in Beijing, Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang condemned protectionism and agreed to expand cooperation in various areas. Both leaders oversaw the signing of several memoranda of understanding and agreements, including GPS and economic cooperation. The meeting comes in the backdrop of mounting tensions across the world as the trade war between US and China has been escalating of late. Food companies from around the world have brought their best products to China's International Import Expo in Shanghai in a bid to win the Chinese consumers. Nearly 2,000 companies from 100 countries in the world are exhibiting their food and agricultural products at the Expo, which opened on Monday. In the exhibition area, covering over 60,000 square meters, visitors can find some of the world's best-known delicacies, including coffee from Kenya, Shive coffee from Indonesia, cheese from the Netherlands, and ham from Spain. Kidnapped children released. Kidnappers freed scores of school children and a driver in West Cameroon, but kept hold of a principal and one teacher. The armed men who seized the 78 youngsters on November 5 released them about 18 kilometers away in the town of Bafut. Officials said that no ransom was paid, but gave no more details on the circumstances leading to the release. North Korea's state-run television has aired a video of leader Kim Jong-un seeing off Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel at Pyongyang International Airport. The Cuban delegation arrived in Pyongyang on Sunday for a three-day visit to the country. The two leaders discussed ways to boost bilateral ties in various fields, including the economy, culture, and public health. The Cuban president took office in April. Kim Jong-un met him in 2015 when he traveled to Pyongyang as Cuba's first vice president. A day after Diwali, air quality in the Indian capital is now in the severe plus category, with several areas recording an air quality index as high as 900. The overall air quality in Delhi and the adjoining areas has degraded severely, and the capital woke up to dense haze a day after the festival of Diwali. According to the Central Pollution Control Board, the further degradation of air quality is being caused by a combination of firecrackers, stubble burning, and change in wind speed patterns. The Indian military might is set to get a boost. India's Minister of Defence Nirmala Sitharaman will hand over the first batch of K9 Vajra-T self-propelled artillery guns on November the 9th to the Indian Army. India-Russia military cooperation will soar higher with new technical wing. The K9 Vajra-T is a howitzer gun and a variant of the highly successful K9 Thunder, modified for the Indian conditions. Members of the Sports Council of Jammu and Kashmir participated in the mega weekly cleanliness drive to conserve the famous Dal Lake. The volunteers were also joined by tourists, and they were seen removing algae, weed, plastic and other kinds of garbage from the lake. Studies have suggested a gradual decline in the quality of the lake water for the past few decades because of sewage drains and diffused runoff emptying into it. Along with this, the lake is also facing the natural pollution from circumstances affecting the biodiversity of the lake. Disney is celebrating Mickey Mouse's 90th birthday with the first ever Mickey the True Original exhibition in New York. Numerous contemporary artists were commissioned to reimagine the classic character with site-specific, reinterpreted Mickey Mouse installations. The exhibition begins with Mickey's 1930s debut in the short film Steamboat Willie and focuses on moments in Mickey's life that are most relevant. Mickey the True Original exhibition will run from November the 8th until the 10th of February next year.